Welcome to Backstage at the Enharmonic. My name is Sean J. Kennedy. Today's guest is Joseph Conyers, Assistant Principal Bassist with the Philadelphia Orchestra, founder of Project 440, and the newly appointed director of the Philadelphia All City Orchestra. I've been very fortunate to see Joseph perform in chamber ensembles and with the Philadelphia Orchestra. I've also seen him interact with youth and present master classes and clinics. Whether he's performing, lecturing, or teaching, it is always a deeply moving, soulful experience, full of joy and exuberance, by one of the most gifted and humble musicians I've ever met.
Thanks for taking some time today out of your busy, very busy schedule and answering a few questions for my podcast.
Yeah, no problem.
All of my guests, what I do is I start to find out where it all began. Your earliest musical memory, where you grew up. Did you have a musical family, parents, siblings? Anything to shed light on where you think maybe the first kernel of music influenced you somewhere in your life?
That's a good question. I don't know if I can remember my first music memory because it's always been a part of my life. So it's almost like asking like the first time you blinked or something. It's always been literally every aspect of my life. I grew up in the African American Baptist church tradition, and there was music, of course, every Sunday. And my mother was involved in some of the choir work there, but she also did a lot of singing of her own, which is actually how we all, when I say we, my twin sister and older brother got involved in classical music because she had the love for classical music. And she used to sing with the Atlanta Symphony chorus. So we were taken and introduced to classical music in a really, really, at a really early stage in our life. And I think that in tandem with kind of my love for gospel music at an early age, was just a part of who I was and part of my development as a young person, let alone a young musician. So I wish I could be more descriptive about the exact time, but I will say from out the gate, I knew that music would play a very big role in my life. My mom started me on piano when I was 5 because she said I used to, well, a few things. One, whenever the washing machine had the little rhythm going, when it was like agitating the clothes, I would actually start to dance to it. So she knew I had rhythm inside of me from that. But then after church, she said I would come home and we had a piano because that was very important to the family. I had a piano in the house. I would come home and start trying to pick out the tunes from church on the piano. So she waited till I was 5 to actually start giving me formal instruction, but I started piano lessons when I was 5 years old. My twin sister started cello when she was 5 because we both started at the same time. My older brother started violin when he was 9, and that's the way it was for about 5-6 years before I decided that I wanted to be part of the fun because my brother and sister were always going off to rehearsals and playing with their friends, and I was always practicing by myself. So the music teacher at the school needed a new bass player, and I was originally supposed to be a trombone player because for a long time I thought that's what I was just going to do. And but she convinced me that the bass was the instrument for me. She thought I would be a good fit because of my piano background, and she made a great assessment, I would have to say, some 20-something years later.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's interesting that you, even though you weren't drawn to the bass originally, it was a bass clef instrument again. So you were in the low end, even when you had aspirations of playing a brass instrument.
Well, you're right. And it's also funny. Apparently, it's kind of the unwritten rule that the older child normally plays the higher instrument, and the younger child normally plays a lower instrument. So, I mean, our family fit right into that mold because my brother started with violin, my sister on cello, and then I ended up on the bass.
Yeah, the family assignments are in score order, I guess.
That's right. That's correct. That is correct.
So you started on, you went to bass, and have you lived your whole musical career on upright, or have you ever dabbled in electric, or were you ever required to play electric coming up, or did you just stay with acoustic the whole time?
I stayed with acoustic the whole time. I never had to play electric. I guess because I had so many different interests when I was in school, not so different from where I am now. But I was involved in a lot of things. So for me, bass and classical bass playing was something very specific. And a lot of people ask, well, didn't you want to play jazz, or didn't you want to play something other than classical, or especially with piano and growing up in a Baptist church, why taking those chops to a new and different level. And I honestly have to say, I just was never any good at it. I'm not the greatest improviser. I can fake it when I have to, and on some occasions I've had to do that. But I'm not the greatest improviser, and I've always been envious of those who are able to kind of sit down and just play. I feel like the way I communicate musically is just through a slightly different medium, where I can take composers' works and bring them to life in a way that hopefully is organic, and as if I'm making it up on the spot. But the actual making it up and the improvisation was something that never came naturally to me. I think I'm a little too much of a control freak to do that.
Understood. Yeah. Now, you mentioned you had a love of gospel music early on, and it continues. Have you ever transferred any of the gospel music onto bass, or done anything with that?
Well, the closest thing is when I say gospel music, I think. Okay, sorry. When it comes to the transfer to the bass, it's not necessarily playing the gospel music on the bass, but definitely kind of creating that expression and that aura, or that feeling, that intensity that gospel music has, and bringing that to classical music. And it's neat, because at the end of the day, and I've said it to multiple people, but at the end of the day, to me, music is, all these different genres of music are parallel, going to the same place. I think at the end of the day, regardless of the genre, I had the opportunity to see one of Yo-Yo Ma's Silk Road performances, where you take all these different forget genres, but literally different parts of the world and different cultures, and how their music relates to music of the Western. So you had a lot of Eastern music and ensembles and instruments. And to me, at the end of the day, the expression was always just as visceral and just as real as anything that I could do as a gospel player or as a classical player. So for me, it's about kind of going above this genre label and getting the biggest expression out of myself humanly possible. Gospel is more obvious, I would say, but one of the things I've been really excited about as a classical musician is bringing those elements of expression into the classical music space. And it's really, really wonderful. And I'll be honest, either people love it or people hate it. Luckily, I feel like I play in an orchestra that really likes to go for it and really likes to stretch its musical limits. And I feel like in that regard, I ended up where I was supposed to in winning a job at the Philadelphia Orchestra.
It reminds me of, I forget, I paraphrase, but was it Louis Armstrong that said, or Duke, I can't remember, that there were two types of music, either good or bad, and
right.
Kind of what you were saying. The genre doesn't matter as long as you're communicating, reaching beyond just yourself and trying to get the message out there, which is great.
Sure, absolutely true.
Did the younger Joe ever imagine, did you see yourself as like a middle school or high school kid, like, yes, I'm going to be in the Philadelphia Orchestra, or was it a far-off dream, and when you finally won the spot, where you just, was it surreal? What was that like?
It's great you asked that question, because actually, through my nonprofit work, I talk to a lot of students about this process for me a lot. And it's really funny. I didn't know exactly where I was going to end up, but I knew I wanted it, and I wanted it really bad. So my first musical heroes were the members of the Atlanta Symphony, because they were my hometown orchestra, and I got to see them every week because I volunteered to usher, which means I got to see the concerts for free. So that they were my musical heroes, and I mean, in many respects, I think once a hero in one's mind, they're always a hero. But I was exposed to more and more, and I mean, I'll be honest. When I first got to Curtis install the Philadelphia Orchestra at the Academy of Music, I was like, wow. I was like, this is pretty incredible, and I'd love to be a part of that. But the thing is, it seemed, because you look at it, I had a long way to go. I mean, I was an 18-year-old from Savannah. I think I got into Curtis by a mistake that Hal made some sort that he wasn't willing to admit. So it was too late. And I knew I had a long way to get there, but I saw what I wanted, and I knew one day I wanted to be on that stage. I used to tell people, even if I could be the guy to sweep the stage, that would make me really happy with the Philadelphia Orchestra. I think I really, really, really wanted it, but it was one of those things where I didn't say, well, that's where I'm going to be, because I didn't know where life was going to take me. But I did imagine myself there, very much so. And because of that, I planned my life and my life trajectory on building the blocks, even sometimes putting the blocks there myself, so I could take that path and that journey up towards that goal. And it's like either the tortoise and the hare, or the story of Hercules, how he got stronger. He carried the bull every day. You don't realize sometimes, and I really emphasize it to my students, how much progress you might be making over the long haul. Because what we see are the short distances, and sometimes we feel like we're falling back. But if we have our eye on that prize, and we're always working towards that, there is that incremental climb. And I auditioned for the Philadelphia Orchestra when I was a student at Curtis. I auditioned to be on the sub list, and I did not get on. And I actually still have that rejection letter in my locker at work today. And it's it wasn't like this big thing that's like, oh, one day I'll get it, but it was just to remind myself that I need to keep working, and one day I will hopefully be able to make it. And I mean, honestly, Sean, when I still pinch myself. This is my 6th year on the job, and I still pinch myself that I won a job, or the job that I did with the Philadelphia Orchestra, because it is a true honor and privilege and a blessing and everything to make music with these fantastic musicians on an almost daily basis. It's just absolutely, really, really incredible.
So was the audition process, was it lengthy? Was it more than a year? How did that work?
So with most auditions, they normally actually take place in a very short amount of time. I believe for my position, for the Philadelphia audition, there were over 200-something resumes. They whittled us down to about 115 applicants to show up in person. And they held the audition over about 5 days. So luckily, my prelim was on the day before semi, so I didn't have to play early. One of the things I hate doing is waiting in between rounds. So I played my prelim, and then the next day was the semi, and the next morning was the final, and that afternoon was what we call the super final, when it was just down to 2 applicants. So By that evening, 5 o'clock, they let me know, and I had to drive back to Atlanta because I had a 10 o'clock a.m. rehearsal the next morning.
Man.
So I drove but I tell you, it was the easiest overnight drive of my entire life, guaranteed. And I drove that night. But you find out basically immediately. Now, but I was hired for the position, but then you have to get tenure, and that process takes generally a year. So by May of my first season with the orchestra, it was actually at the Kennedy Center. I had my tenure meeting, and I was granted tenure with the Philadelphia Orchestra.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow, and I had no idea that it was that quick, that amount of intensity in such a narrow window. That's incredible.
It is really intense, because I mean, it's funny. Again, something I tell my students is it's all the work built up to that moment. So not only the 2 to 3 months of preparation for the audition, but all the years of failed auditions, and they all build up to that moment. And then it's just, I mean, that first round, where you might play for 6-7 minutes. It's very intense. But at the end of the day, I actually found try to make the experience as pleasant as possible. Because at the end of the day, it was all about making music. And if it wasn't fun, then to me, I wasn't actually making real music. And I just always try to keep that perspective.
Outstanding. Now, you mentioned throughout our discussion here a lot about your students. You refer to them a lot. And I know you're actively involved with young people with Project 440 and the Philadelphia All City Orchestra. And I know I think they've come together. Could you tell me about both projects, how they interrelate to each other, how the first project started, and all that stuff?
Sure. So Project 440 is the lead strategic planning partner for All City. So we aren't quite joined, but we do act kind of as a representative and a fiscal agent in awareness and fundraising for the All City institution. All City's been around a long time. It has a really storied history and storied past. And to this day, I think 8 to 10 members of the orchestra are actually alumni of the All City program. What it is, it's the top high school students in the Philadelphia region who are in the public school Philadelphia sector of the school district. So the top performing students in the school district of Philadelphia. They used to meet once a week throughout the year because the budget cuts is down to as few as 6 to 8 rehearsals a year. And I was offered the position as music director because I've been doing a lot of work with students in other forms in the school district, and they thought I might be a good match as a music director. So how does Project 440 fit in? Well, 440 was started in Savannah in 2007 by myself and 2 other founding members, and what we did is we gave community presentations in the Savannah area with the loss of the Atlanta Symphony in 2003. What we wanted to do was fill a void in music education by their absence. So we did that for a few years, but by 2010 we realized it was really hard to find musicians with the skill set to go down and to encourage young people in this way. And we said, well, this is a problem. So we shifted our focus from doing the presentations ourselves to teaching other young musicians how to do this work and the importance of doing this type of service work in their community through music. And we thought it would be good for the industry as a whole. So we've grown with that concept, and we have a whole 3-pronged approach with how we work with our students. We talk about college and career preparedness. We talk about leadership and entrepreneurship training. And we also do community engagement and interactive performance. So that's actually putting the students that we work with in small groups and sending them out in the community to be ambassadors for music. Also gives them a sense of what it's like to put something together, to schedule all those intricacies, and encourage each other while they're doing this process. So when I was asked that I would be the new music director of All City, well, it seemed like the perfect marriage with the organizations in that way, with me being kind of the conduit, and that is to be able to provide the students of All City with these lifelong skills through music, because that's our big story at 440. We talk about using music as a tool to teach kids the things that will make them the future leaders of Philadelphia, not Philadelphia, but literally the country or the world, through this type of training. So all the students right now in the All City Orchestra and Band had access to 440 materials. We have a book called The Musician's Guide to Social Entrepreneurship. They received lectures from our teaching artists and a list of esteemed guest lecturers. And next year, we hope to expand the program to the whole of All City. So all the students, about 450 of them, are receiving our 440 material and guidance.
I think if I remember the news correctly, a few months ago, you went to Europe last summer, right, with the group?
Yes. So the outgoing music director, Don Muthi, always had a dream of sending the All City Orchestra to Italy. And I guess with his announcement that he would be departing the organization, he thought he'd go out with a bang, and sure enough, he did. A lot of money was raised in a very, very short amount of time to send all the students of All City Orchestra, along with 20-some-odd chaperones, to Italy, absolutely free of charge to the students.
Wow.
It was an incredible experience for everyone involved. The students bonded in an amazing way. Many of the students had never hardly left the Philadelphia metropolitan area, let alone hop on a plane and end up on another continent. But it was really, really fantastic experience for all, and I hope with all this planning that we might be able to plan something like that in the future for our students.
That'd be incredible. And I'm going to, when I post this podcast, I'll definitely have a link to the website. It's project440.org, correct?
That is correct, and we that website's about to get a pretty intense overhaul, but you can still send people there. We're more active on Facebook, so if you want to see what's some of our most recent activity, you can see that via Facebook at Project 440.
Great, I'll add that to the links too. Just real quick, what is the 440? What does that signify?
Well, when we changed our name, which was in 2010, when we made that shift from doing the work in the community to teaching other young musicians how to do that work, we realized we kind of became an organization of education versus just kind of outreach and community engagement. And so we went through this whole branding process, and 440 came up because it's 440 hertz. And 440 hertz is the pitch A, which is the exact note that Dick Whittam's principal oboist of the Philadelphia Orchestra plays at the beginning of every single concert. So just like that's the first note you hear at every concert, with most of the orchestras now, I mean, to get technical, some orchestras tune at 441, 443, but Philadelphia Orchestra still tunes at 440. Just like that's the first note you hear at every concert, so we want our young people that we work with to be leaders in their communities through music.
Oh, that's great. I should have gotten that. It's a musical puzzle. I didn't figure it out. So just one or two more questions. On your iPod or whatever you listen to music on, do you listen to music for fun? If so, what might be in rotation on Joe Conyers' iPod, if we looked at it right now?
Wow, what a crazy question. Well, it's funny you ask that, because people ask me, do I listen to other genres? And I do every once in a while, and I did for quite some time, and that was generally like older tunes and maybe some old gospel. But in the last, it's kind of weird, like in the last 7 to 8 months, it's been all classical. I have a Spotify account where I have about 1,000 classical music pieces on random. So who knows what's going to pop up? And there's a lot more I can actually add to that. So I do listen to a lot of classical. I think there's so much variety for everything from the Baroque to the contemporary to the symphonic and the operatic, chamber music and solo works, and it's just so much stuff. As I said, but if I do listen to something other than, it's normally like kind of like oldie stuff, which is actually kind of related to gospel in a lot of ways, because it's kind of the same, very, very similar construct. Sorry, I'm a little boring that way. I hope people don't mind so much.
No, not at all. Because I've talked to you on numerous occasions, and I've seen you teach, and your passion is just overflowing. And saying that you're into gospel music, oldies, it goes hand in hand with who you are. You know, it's a very passionate and giving person. So it totally makes sense. All right, last question. We've been talking about music and education. Let's just go somewhere else. Besides music, if you have a few minutes or hours during the year, what are some other things that you might like to do to relax and have fun outside of music?
Okay, well, that's a neat question, because I think if people didn't know me well, they might consider me a gym rat. I find myself in the gym very often. I've even been competitive in the bodybuilding world on a very, very small scale. Only natural bodybuilding. I've just done a few shows. But that's been a big passion of mine. It's funny, when I was in school, both my parents and my original teacher were like, you should do something besides play the bass all the time. So I got in the gym, and that was my junior year college. By 5 years, I gained 61 pounds. I became a big boy, and then after 30, I started getting more intensive about it, and that's when I started doing some show stuff. So bodybuilding is fun, and when I was younger, I had a very, 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 very big passion for meteorology. The local meteorologist in Savannah, Pat Prokop, was like one of my biggest heroes. And I would even do weather reports and then rain reports. And I was a storm tracker and got my official certification by the National Weather Service to be a storm spotter. And to this day, a good hurricane or a good winter storm gets me. It really keeps me up at night because I always have to track it.
That's awesome.
So I always say, if it weren't music, maybe I'd be on screen with Jim Cantori in some ridiculous weather situation, holding on to something for dear life.
That's outstanding.
But that's not the way things turned out. Maybe in retirement. We'll see what happens.
I'd love to see that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Joe. Thanks for taking the time. It was very enlightening. I learned a lot of stuff, and I hope the listeners do too. And check it out. And, of course, I'll put links to all the projects you're involved to right under the podcast when it's finished.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sean. This has been a lot of fun.
Okay, great. Talk to you later.
Take care.
Today's soundtrack was provided by the Chamber Orchestra of Philadelphia, featuring Joseph Conyers. Follow the link below to purchase a copy for yourself today. Thanks for listening.